Welcome back to the FTN NFL Draft Team Preview Series. I'm your host, Mike Randle. You can follow me on Twitter at RandleRant. And today we head to Cincinnati to talk about one of the most explosive teams in the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals. Super successful, young, talented. They have it all. And the only person to go to here to cover the Bengals is Jay Morrison. Follow him on Twitter at JMorrisonATH. He's the Bengals beat writer for the Athletic NFL. Jay, thanks for joining us here for a few minutes. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Mike. How are you?
Doing fantastic. And look, Bengals, obviously, let's talk about the recap. Came into the season, sort of the common thought here outside of Cincinnati, maybe, Jay, was, teams that lose the Super Bowl are going to regress, or there's going to be sort of a bring back here to the rest of the pack. Maybe the start of the year wasn't great, but boy, the Bengals took off second half of the year. And I think right now you have one of the dominant teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I think they are, and I don't know that the 0-2 start was due to Super Bowl hangover or aggression. I think that goes directly to Joe Burrow and the appendectomy and him losing all that time in camp, and they just he wasn't 100%. They weren't on the where they needed to be as an offense. I mean, 5 turnovers in the opener. You never see Joe Burrow do that. And so I think Zach Taylor handled it really the right way, where he basically gave them the spring off. Yes, they had OTAs, but they didn't do any team periods. It was a very light kind of letting their bodies rejuvenate, and it was the longest season in NFL history. They went the distance, and even training camp, they didn't go as hard as some teams do. And you look back and you're like, geez, if they don't lose to Pittsburgh and Dallas in week 1 and 2, then they're probably playing that AFC Championship game at home. Maybe it's a different story. So maybe there's a little bit of a lesson to be learned there to not try to ease in and be ready to go for the opener. But I think the appendectomy for Burrow really kind of set them back those first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it did. And of course, now off season, we're looking to next year. I have to ask you, a lot of sort of news going around here about Joe Mixon. We're hearing today that he is not directly involved in the incident. What are you hearing about Joe Mixon? Teams are always trying to move running backs. Derrick Henry rumor now is being shopped here, but Mixon been super productive for the Bengals. Just what's his status? What are you hearing right now surrounding the lead running back for the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, it's dicey because we don't have all the facts yet. They have not made any charges. They did name suspects, and Mixon is not one of them, but it did occur at his residence. This is the second incident involving Joe. That the day before they flew to Buffalo, he was accused of pointing a gun at a female in a road rage incident as he was late getting to the stadium to get on the flight to go to Buffalo. Those charges were dismissed, but the case was left open, so that those charges can always be refiled. I think we might hear something on that today as we talk on Friday. But Mixon's future with the team, that off the field stuff aside, I don't think that matters. The Bengals are not going to pay him $12.8 million to be a running back this year, so they're going to ask him to take a pay cut. He's probably going to say no, and good chance we've seen the last of Joe Mixon as a Bengal. I mean, things can always change. I think they want to target a running back in free agency. Definitely want to go after one in the draft. Samaje Perine, his backup, is also a free agency, so they're not making any rash moves yet. The Bengals typically don't make a move until they have to anyhow. So they're going to wait and see how this plays itself out. But I'd be really surprised to see Joe Mixon back in 2023 unless he's willing to do it for less money.
Yeah, that just seems to be the trend now in the NFL. And you touched on free agency with P. Ryan, who was very talented, really was very productive and efficient in his time. Talk about the other free agents on both sides of the ball here, because Bengals solid on both sides, explosive on offense, solid defense. They stand toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. They don't back down. So free agency, I think, is going to be a key component here of the Bengals offseason.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse Bates is the top free agent. It's a pipe dream to think he's coming back. I mean, they've made a run at this 2 years in a row. They had a chance to extend him and they didn't do it. Then they put the franchise tag on him last year. Very contentious. Jesse not happy with that at all. Sat out OTA, sat out most of training camp, came back and played well. You could tell the day after the season ended, the emotions were coming out of him. The writing was on the wall even before that, but he's moving on. So that makes the most important free agent on this team, Von Bell, the other safety, because you cannot lose both safeties in this defense that Lou Anarumo has really kind of mastered. And he talked about it last year, where Dax Hill, first round pick, when we asked him, can you work him in a little more? And he's like, absolutely not. You don't rotate DBs. He said it's like a shortstop and a second baseman on the double play combination. There's just this feel, and you don't want to mess that up. And if they lose both Bell and Bates, that's going to be a huge hit, because then you're talking about Dax Hill, last year's first round pick, and then Tyson Anderson, last year's fifth round pick, who didn't play a single play. As of now, those would be the guys. So Von Bell is the big one. Hayden Hurst, tight end. I do think they're going to make a run at him and probably get him back. It seems like there's interest on both sides. Got more than they even hoped for last year out of Hayden Hurst, only $3.5 million. They let CJ Uzama walk. He didn't do much in New York, and it really a bargain with Hayden Hurst, what he brought energy wise and production wise. And then P. Ryan again would be the other one. Then you look at the unlikely ones, and Eli Apple. That's probably not going to happen. Linebacker Jermaine Pratt, he has been very vocal about wanting to be a 3-down linebacker. He's just not going to be that in Lou's system, so I think we see him walk. And then, of course, Jesse Bates is on his way out. So those, the big six, 3 with a good chance to stay, 3 they're probably moving on from.
You're curious, Jason. Now let's turn to the NFL draft. Of course, draft picks coming up. I think they picked 28th overall, only 31 picks in the first round, because Miami had to forfeit their pick. Last year, Bengals start defense. Talking about what you said with running back, or based on them going on defense, 3 picks in a row last year, where do you think they go this year? What do you think the focus is? Because it sounds like the free agency sort of affects what the plan will be.
Somewhat, but I would put it at 67-70% that they take a tackle. They are uncertain, both in terms of what they have currently and what they, if healthy, and will they be healthy, because Lael Collins, the right tackle, they signed him to a 3-year free agent deal. 3-year free agent deal last year. He tore his ACL on Christmas Eve. Pretty much a long shot. He's going to be ready for the start of the season. Jonah Williams had a dislocated kneecap. He had surgery on that knee after the season. He's going into his 5th-year option. That money's guaranteed, but he's never really developed into the guy they thought he would be when they took him 11th overall. So they have long-term questions at both those tackle spots, and immediate questions at the right tackle spot. So I see them going after a tackle in the first round, a guy that can compete with Jackson Carman. Maybe they sign a free agent tackle as well to kind of come in and compete, see where LC is with his rehab, and you bring in a guy that can maybe win the starting job at right tackle this year, or he's your swing tackle and then he's your left tackle next year. It's just they are really unsettled at those tackle positions, and we've seen, I mean, the last 2 years, the breakdowns on the offensive line is what has cost them from winning a couple Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just going back a couple of years, and then we'll let you go, Jay. Fantastic information as always. The big question for us NFL draft people was Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
Obviously, Chase has been amazing, fantastic. So I guess it sounds like that was a pivot point, solidified the offense, and now we got to solidify that offensive line. Seems to be sort of the general thought here is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's interesting because they keep trying. They keep drafting these tackles and they just don't work out. And we saw it last year in free agency. 5 minutes into the legal tampering period, they sign Alex Kappa and they sign Ted Karras, and they shore up a guard in the center position. That's what Joe Burrow is the most frustrating for him. What he feels like he feels like he can deal with the pressure off the edge, and he can see him coming or he can make a miss. What really, I don't even say rattles him, but throws him off is when the pressure comes up the middle in his face. And that's where that game against the Titans, that playoff game 2 years ago, 9 sacks, that's where all that pressure was coming from. So they really did a good job of solidifying the interior of the line, but the tackles are still a work in progress. And they just, with the Burrow contract looming and with the amount of free agent, or with the amount of salary cap money they have, and the way they could take some chances and push some stuff down the road, but they don't like to do that. They just don't have the money to go out and get a really solid left tackle or right tackle for that matter in free agency. Maybe they surprise us, maybe they do, but it feels like they're going to be throwing darts at it again and get a middling starter in free agency and get a first round pick, maybe another one later in the draft, and once again see if they can patchwork an offensive line together to keep Joe Burrow upright. You don't have to give him a lot of time. You just need to give him a couple seconds. But it's been an ongoing concern for this franchise ever since they let Andrew Whitworth walk after 2016.
Folks, great insight as always. Jay Morrison, one of the most efficient interviews I get. Packs in the information, short period of time. Make sure to get it in and get it out here. Twitter, at Jay Morrison, ATH, writes for the Athletic NFL. Check him out. It's great work all year. Thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate a few minutes. We know you're super busy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike.